Hello, everyone, and you are now viewing Justified Jewel Podcast. I am your host, Joanne Cox, and we're doing a series of different episodes, but guess what? They're all about the political arena. It is about you getting more knowledgeable on your piece of the puzzle and how you can better understand some of the things that's happening in the political world and not wait until it's time to vote. You need to know these things. And sometimes it's lack of knowledge and you don't know what you don't know. But again, I have what I call the expert of having the privilege of having Bryant Winters one more time with this podcast to let us know what to look out for, what titles to look under, and what is actually going on. Welcome, Bryant, again.
Thank you, Joanne. It's good to be here again.
Yes, yes. And again, I want to say that you can find me on justifiedjewel.com. Where can they find you, Brian?
They can learn more about my campaign to put America on path to a bright and bountiful future. You can on my website, votewithbrian.com.
Yes. And we've got different episodes. And guess what? This is episode 11. So please go back and look at any previous episodes if you have by any chance missed. Make sure that you subscribe, bring a friend, and let people know what you have now learned and some of the things that you are now going to take action on. What is our topic today, Brian?
Well, today we're going to talk about rebuilding the economy. But, I guess the thing that I want to make sure that your viewers leave with is a sense of hope. Is that maybe you recognize that things have gotten off track in the United States. Maybe you recognize that we're not living up to our full potential. And that I want you to leave with a hope that we could fix these things, that we can put America on a better path. And we can do that this year in 2026. And so the form of changing directions, as your regular viewers know, that I have written a 2,000-page legislative package for Congress, drawing on my years of serving in the state legislature and with some help from AI in research and drafting. And it addresses hundreds and hundreds of problems in the United States. And so the deal that the Vote with Brian campaign is offering to Congress across all 470 congressional races is pass the Populist Act before the election, and we can help you keep your jobs. If you refuse to act and you just let all these problems sit and you ignore them, well, then we can kick you out of office and kick you out of power. Doesn't matter whether you're on the red team or the blue team. We're all on Team America, and we should all want to see America solve problems. And one of the reoccurring issues in the United States is jobs. Is that people look for, people depend on jobs to take care of their families. We look for, high quality, high paying jobs for employment. And, and for many years, those of factory jobs have been a source of both pride and income for many people in America. And over the last 20 years or so, the number of manufacturing jobs has fallen by several million.
Mm.
And, and so what do we do about that, Joanne? We're I think your question though is how do we get there?
Yes.
And so it's a combination of factors, right? One of them is outsourcing, is that these jobs we take them and we move them to other countries, and instead of doing them here, so where perhaps we pay people less, or they don't have the same protections, but they don't have as good of working conditions, and so it can be cheaper. And a lot of that is done for financial reasons, that corporations are looking to make a quick buck instead of reinvesting in the people in this country who've made it great. Another part of it is automation, right? Is that as with modern technology, we can produce the same amount of goods without everybody working quite so hard. And we went through this in the end of the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution, where factories helped increase the amount of production that the United States had. And then, and when factories first started up, people had to work long, long hours. The factory owners expected people to work maybe 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And we eventually realized that that wasn't necessary. And so, as part of the New Deal, we established the 40-hour work week and gave people more leisure time, more free time. And so now, 80 years later, production has gotten to the point where we don't need every single adult working 40 hours a week anymore. That we can still produce all the things that we need and have more leisure time. And so one of the things that we've talked about is the Populist Act includes unconditional basic income, UBI, where every adult citizen would get an unconditional amount of money to help them, help them meet their needs, help them take care of their family, of $55 a day for adults and $22 a day for kids. So that would be enough to lift every American family up above the poverty line. So that to whatever extent the factory jobs are not as necessary now as they used to be, that people still have a reliable, dependable source of income to take care of their families.
Now, with this being said, and maybe this is not connected to the last statement, but with this being said, with the monies coming in and the production jobs not as available as in the past, would there be anything to help with training so that what you did as a production worker, you can now have something in that area, but yet you can't afford to go to trade school? How would that work and how can we get that on the map?
Yeah, the government often offers, retraining programs and things like that, right? They used to tell people learn to code and then you can
Mm-hmm.
be a software engineer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, these programs never really worked as well as they could have. And with UBI, with unconditional basic income, by ensuring that people have more disposable income, we create opportunities for entrepreneurs to start their own businesses because the people in their communities will have more money to spend. And this is one of the things that as countries and cities have done basic income pilots around the globe, is they find that people are more likely to start their own business.
Yes. And there are so many people like say a production company where you've got 500 people or plus in this production job and then they get ready to close out. What I would like to see is that someone has come in and put this seed in their head of hope, and that there is another way to continue to make that amount of money plus. And sometimes when we're satisfied with getting that paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or bi-weekly or what have you, you don't even think about having that resource of saying, I need some training so that if this goes wrong or if this closes, I have plan B. I would like to see whether you want it to or not, production establishments will have someone to come in and to say, this is what this is connected to. You have been doing a I don't even know what the word is, an assembly line or what conveyor belt. And what can this be transitioned into? If you're in the military and you're a tank driver, you can't drive tanks anywhere else unless you're in the military. What does this relate to? Can you give me some other skills that I can use outside of this? And if you've got a whole different thing going on up in your head and wanting to be that entrepreneur, can we get this seed planted that there's something for everyone? Everyone should have hope other than just the assistant outside of the $55 that you were talking about. That is what I would like to see put in place.
Absolutely, yes. And I think I wandered away from your question a little bit. So yes, the Populist Act does a number of things to help America re-industrialize.
Yes.
It sets up a strategic partnership corporation that would partner with in developing industry. So sort of in the way during World War II, Joanne, the government built factories and then had private companies come in and run them to build, the tanks and the planes and all those sorts of things that helped us win World War II. And so we could do the same model again, where you want to start a factory, you want to manufacture something, which might take, huge amounts of startup funds to get off the ground. And this strategic partnership corporation could you could make a deal with them where they'll build the factory, and then you and your team can come in and run it and manufacture things here in the United States.
Yeah,
Um,
I can see
there-
that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a trust fund that would help channel money towards those more productive investments. Unfortunately, a lot of the investment that's being done in the United States today is for financial products, right? Is just Wall Street making up new things and just moving money around, but not actually producing anything, not actually building anything. And so the Populist Act would help steer those investments back into productive channels of actually building things. One of the other ways that we can encourage this is by creating a steady demand for products. And
Hmm.
so there's talk about semiconductors and the importance of the United States being able to, be self-sufficient in some of these high-tech products that are so important for the economy in the 21st century. And so the Populist Act would establish a microprocessor reserve, sort of the same way we have this like strategic petroleum reserve and with the way we used to stockpile things. And so what this will do is if you're thinking about starting up a factory, you know that you'll have a dependable customer that you'll be able to sell to.
Hmm.
And, as I've started a couple of businesses, I think you have too. And, finding regular customers is essential to success. And
Hmm.
so if the government can help serve that role in creating a demand for these American-made products, then that will strengthen our industrial base here at home.
Yeah, and that key word is demand for the product. And that needs to be on your forefront before you get into that particular business, so that once you get in, it's a new business. Maybe you have uh, a good clientele from the beginning, but then after that, they will maybe just supporting you to support you. But what you want is for them to want your product. We want to see people get their full potential. We want businesses to work into their full potential, and we want to understand about reinvesting in everything. And you talked about, how to change the directions, and you've made that very clear in that, and how the populace can act in this. I like the idea that sometimes we can do an episode and not even use the word populace, but this is what this is all about, is having that. I want to know about unions. Do they really work?
Yeah, unions do work, right? A union is a group of people collectively bargaining to improve their lives. And my model for political reform, the Vote with Brian campaign, creates a union of voters nationwide so that we can collectively bargain because unions are really helpful in lopsided power arrangements, Joanne, right? This is why we think of labor unions, but there's also tenant unions and student unions where one side has a lot more power and individuals on the other side don't necessarily aren't able to negotiate individually. And so by coming together with a shared vision and shared set of demands, they can better make sure they're better represented. And so labor policy in this country has been done sort of haphazardly over the decades. And so the Populist Act includes what's called the PRO Act and would strengthen protections for workers. You might have heard a couple of years ago, Joanne, there was an Amazon warehouse up in New York that organized and unionized and said, we're a union now, and the workers voted and said we want to be part of this union. And then so after you unionize, you should have a contract, right? That's the purpose. Well, after 4 years, Amazon still hasn't given them a contract. They're dragging their feet, and that how does that help improve your life if you say you're part of a union and then you're not actually able to negotiate? And so one of the things the Populist Act would do is require negotiation between unions and management.
And what that sounds like to me is I'm going to entice you with something that I think you want, but I'll never give it to you. And that is the kind of thing that you want to make sure that people can actually circle back on because it sounds good and everybody's ready for that to happen, but it never comes into existence. And when that happens, in my opinion, is that you never meant for that to take place from the beginning. And if you didn't mean for it to take place in the beginning, it means something in the water is not clean. Have you ever heard that phrase?
I have not actually.
So you heard it first here. Something in the water is not clean.
Something.
Because if I want to have a union and I'm telling you we're going to do this, and then we need to set the contract, but it doesn't come to form, it means that we need to do something about it and push forward. And it should not take 4 years for that to have been evident that it didn't take place. I don't know how long it should take and what the steps are to form a union, but I do know that everyone should have one so that they have that representation of being treated fairly, whether it's work hours or whether it's work conditions or whatever the challenge would be in whether it was warehouse, corporate, or whatever. I do believe in unions, and I just asked that first question: do they really work? And I think the answer is yes, if they're put into place the right way.
Absolutely. We've talked about how we can upgrade democracy in the United States to a more collaborative model. And that's what unions do too, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that in many cases, if you can have an adversarial relationship with the employer where they may see you as expendable and if you complain or anything like that, well, you're out the door and there's somebody else who can take your job. And so a union says we're not going to treat each other that way. We're going to give people a chance to have their voices heard and bring up their concerns without fear of reprisal. And we can make the workplace more collaborative. And so yeah, so there are many positive benefits to unions, and you see across the board that unionized workplaces generally make more money, have better benefits, because the people are able to collectively bargain, as opposed to having to try and fight for their benefits individually.
Yes, I can see how that would rebuild the industry. And that's all to me, that's a good thing.
Well,
Yes.
and that's sort of one of the reasons why big manufacturers are frequently opposed to unions, because it means that they'll have to pay more money to their workers. But in exchange for that, they frequently maybe focus on that one line in the budget, but they forget that other benefits come along with that, right? Of having a more reliable workforce, of
Yes.
again having a partner in a union to represent the workers, so that they can collaborate over policy. And many other
And
countries do this. They have sector-wide unions. So here in the United States, at some point, Joanne, we should do an episode and talk about franchises. But
yes.
and if you're a McDonald's worker who wanted to unionize, right? Well, you can't unionize McDonald's workers all across the country. You've got to go store by store because of the way franchises are set up, and so
Right.
it's very very hard to do.
That's
Um,
a whole different topic.
that's a whole
Whole
different
different
topic.
topic.
But I
Yes.
keep talking about this bright and bountiful future that we could put the United States on, and that future has abundance in it of America being able to build the things that it needs, and the Populist Act will shift our industrial policy in a way that helps
Mhm.
us meet those
Yeah.
goals and improve the quality of life for all of us.
And that's what we want. And what the establishments need to know is that when your employees are happy, they work better. They come to work wanting to be at work, and they can help your company become a company of abundance, to see your company grow in quantum leaps. So if we just look at the big picture, as in not being selfish, that we can see the growth in every direction. But as usual, we got to end this segment. And so I would like to thank Brian for being here again and letting us know that we can rebuild America. And we will be back on our next episode, which will be episode 12, and it will be fixing the consumer experience. I like that. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Subscribe, bring a friend, and don't forget that you heard it here on Justified Jewel Podcast. Until next time, thank you again, Brian, and
Thank
bye
you.
bye.